Thank you. The hour being 7 p.m. on Monday, December 27th, 2021. I'd like to call to order the Laconia City Council meeting. Prior to beginning the meeting, I'd ask the clerk, Cheryl Hebert, to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney.
Here.
Counselor Susie.
Here.
Counselor Littman.
Here.
Counselor Haynes.
Here.
Counselor Campbell is not here. Counselor Felch.
Here.
Mayor Hosmer.
Here. Yeah, I think it was all here's, wasn't it? Wow, it's wonderful. Before we go any further, I'd like us to take an opportunity to say the Pledge of Allegiance, hoping Counselor Cheney would lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Counselor Cheney.
My pleasure.
As indicated, we are joined at the council table tonight by City Clerk Cheryl Hebert. We're also joined by City Manager Scott Myers, and Glenn Smith, our Finance Director, is here handling IT. Moving along to item number 7A on our agenda, which is the regular meeting minutes of December 13th, 2021. Minutes of the meeting were distributed to the City Council on Tuesday, December 14th, 2021. With no corrections or changes submitted to the clerk, the minutes will be accepted as distributed. So, moving along to our next agenda item under presentations, which is item 8A. And this is the presentation of the first annual Lieutenant Mark E. Miller Light of the City Award. So if the committee would step forward, if you could. And we're joined by Gail Miller, and I'll have you introduce yourselves. And but before we begin, welcome everyone. I'll have you introduce yourselves in just a minute. I would just like to take a second to certainly read into the record, if for those not familiar, but also to reiterate something that's really important to the history and the legacy of this city. And that's some thoughts about Mark Miller. The first annual Light of the City Award in memory of Laconia firefighter Mark Miller, who died in the line of duty in 2004, is being awarded tonight to Laconia residents Alan and Jennifer Beadle. The Light of the City Award was established by Gail Miller, wife of firefighter Miller, who wanted to recognize city residents who've gone above and beyond in service to the city and its residents. Quote, Mark's career in the fire department and throughout the community was characterized by a strong commitment to serving others and always being willing to go above and beyond when duty called. That's a quote from Gail Miller. She followed up by saying Alan and Jennifer Beadle distinguished themselves among the many nominees as always contributing to make our community a better place. Whether it's leading the development of the WOW Trail or helping raise millions of dollars for the Greater Lakes Region Children's Auction, the Beadles are positively impacting our community by always going above and beyond for the benefit of others. I'm incredibly proud they are the first recipients of this award. That's another quote from Gail Miller. Judy Taggart, who nominated Alan and Jennifer Beadle for the Light of the City Award, shared these thoughts. Alan and Jennifer Beadle have contributed an immense amount of time and resources to Laconia and surrounding communities. Their leadership style is infectious, drawing countless volunteers with various skills to participate in events and to support the Children's Auction and the Community Challenge, the WOW Trail, and Lake Opeechee Preservation Committee. I'm so grateful for their ability to attract others to follow in their footsteps, making a remarkable impact on Laconia and beyond. This recognition is so well deserved, close quote. I just want to welcome you, Gail, this evening and your committee. This is something that you approached me about some time ago. And as we sort of knew it was something we both wanted to do, and it was perhaps long overdue in the city, but it certainly is a passion of yours, and I couldn't be more proud to work with you. So without any further ado, I'd love to have you introduce your group and maybe say a few words about the process and about the award tonight.
Okay. I'm Gail Miller. This is my daughter, Shauna Sewell. Judy. Kelsey Sewell. Actually, Brittany Loring, you are on the committee, so you can come up.
Uh-huh.
Brittany Loring. This is my mom, Jean Fournier. This is my dad, Roger Fournier. I almost forgot his name. We have a couple of, a few members of our committee that aren't here. We have William and Allison Drew and JP and Allison Hobby that also were voting members. So I just want to recognize them. And we accepted nominations for several weeks. We received 6 nominations, and let me tell you, they were very hard to look over and choose one because they all made significant contributions in their own way. So I plan on visiting each one of those people. I'm not going to say who they are. I want to see them in person, but I will give them an award of some sort for being nominated, because I think it's important for them to finish their work and do good things and be recognized for it. But I submitted all the nominations to my family and the other members of the committee for votes, and Alan and Jennifer got the most amount of votes out of anybody. So I am thrilled. Alan actually in my mind was the person, like when I envisioned this award, I was thinking of people like Alan and Jennifer in my mind so I was actually thrilled when Judy's nomination came in for they would be in the running. So thank you for nominating them, and thank you to everybody who nominated someone, because the nominations were really great. And, you know, that's how the process went. And I'm extremely grateful to you, even though I drove you crazy trying to figure out what I was supposed to do. I'm extremely grateful that you took the time to meet with me and listen to me. And we are here today because of it. So you have my heart right there. Thank you.
It's an honor, and Mark's legacy is very powerful still in our community. So thank you, Bob. Does any one of your committee, Judy, looks like you've got something in your hands. I didn't know if you wanted to say a couple of words.
I had to do it in writing because I wouldn't be able to get it out.
Come on up. Thank you,
Thank you.
Gail.
Thank you so much for this. I nominated Alan and Jennifer. Obviously, Alan often says it takes a village, but it really takes a pub. It takes a pub run by the Beatles, a pub that supports our community and its residents and the Lakes Region visitors that come into the area, as well as needy families that are supported by many nonprofits in the area. I just want to quickly share 3 organizations, and you've mentioned a few of them. The Greater Lakes Region Children's Auction. They created Pubmania in 2009, raising over $2.3 million in 11 years. Overcoming many challenges of the 2019 pandemic, in 2020, they formed a committee to transform Pubmania to the It's for the Kids Community Challenge. This change expanded efforts to over 40 teams with hundreds of volunteers playing the +1 game, plus $1 every year is the goal that we all had as team. Over $2.9 million have been raised so far. Part of that effort in 2013, they had 15 annual shuffles at Patrick's that raised over $100,000. And that's $10 at a time by the Wednesday shufflers. Beyond monetary donations, over 108,000 food items have been donated to local pantries during the 13 years of Pubmania, the Community Challenge, and the shuffles. The second organization, obviously, is the Wow Trail. This incredible couple has been instrumental in the development and funding efforts for this unifying landmark. It's a point of pride for Laconia, enjoyed by residents and attracting visitors to the recreational trail. Jennifer serves as the race director for the Runaway Pumpkin Run and Walk, benefiting the Wild Trail. And finally, residing on the shores of Lake Opeechee, the Beatles actively support the mission of the Lake Opeechee Preservation Committee, focused on the protection and conservation efforts essential to maintaining recreational opportunities and property values. I'm really honored to recommend, and I'm so glad that they will receive this award this evening. Congratulations, Emily. Thank you.
Come on up, Jennifer and Alan. Welcome. In a city filled with lots of bright lights and a lot of people who really love and care about this community and always put the extra effort in, I couldn't think of a recipient that's more deserving of this than Alan and Jennifer. So congratulations and thank you on behalf of the city for all you've done, all you continue to do. You make this a great place to live, to work, and to call home. So I'm glad you got the plaque.
I did. A
right.
member of my extended family created this plaque for me, so it's very special in that aspect as well. So, and it was under, it was a terrible thing with the plaque. We'll go there another day, but we'll, when I called her, she was like, yep, I can do it, and I will take care of it. So, and she did a beautiful job. So, I am so happy that you are the first recipients of this award, and it warms my heart to award that to you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much.
much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Yes, thank you to the committee as well. So, moving on to item number 9 on our agenda this evening, which is citizens' comments for matters not on the agenda. Anyone here? Oh, I'm 10. I'm sorry. Yeah, 10. I don't know how many years it's going to take me to get this thing right.
Glasses.
Better glasses.
Doesn't make me feel good.
Item number 10 on our agenda, citizens' comments for matters not on the agenda. Anyone joining us here in City Council chambers, now would be the appropriate time to make a comment for items that are you'd like to address that are not on tonight's agenda. Also, those who have joined us virtually, now would be the appropriate time for you to speak up, raise your hand, and Mr. Smith will identify you and be able to speak. Thank you. Moving on to item number 12, which is nominations, appointments, and elections. Under item 12A, we have Paul Duggan seeking appointment as an alternate member of the planning board to a 3-year term, expiring at the end of June 2024.
The motion to table that.
Okay, that is non-debatable. Counselor Susie has motioned to table this and perhaps be part of his comments during council comments a little later on, maybe talk while you're counseling it. So all those in favor of tabling this right now? That's
Second.
Was there a second? Counselor Cheney. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hands. 5 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Thank you. Item number 12B, which is a request to reappoint Amy Lovisic, Parks and Recreation Director, to the Wow Trail Maintenance Advisory Committee to a 3-year term expiring at the end of November 2024. Right now, I'd be looking for a motion to reappoint Amy Lovisic to the Wow Trail. So made by Counselor Haynes, seconded by Counselor Felch. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hands. That's 5 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Item number 12C on your agenda, which is the request to reappoint Krista Larson, Assistant Public Works Director, to the Wow Trail Maintenance Advisory Committee to a 3-year term expiring at the end of November 2024. Be looking for a motion to do that right now, and so made by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. That's 5 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Congratulations and thank you to both Amy as well as Krista on their willingness to serve. Item number 14. Under public hearings, this is a public hearing relative to the acceptance of the Leary Firefighters Foundation grant. Notice of this public hearing was made available in the December 15th, 2021 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun and posted at Laconia City Hall, SAU, Community Center, and Laconia Public Library. That was published on December 14th, 2021. So at this time, action may be taken up on this matter under unfinished business this evening. I'd like to open the public hearing on this matter at 7:16 p.m. If anyone in the audience would like to speak to this item, now would be the appropriate time. Certainly online would be, anyone's viewing online and would like to speak, now would be the appropriate time as well. I'd like to close the public hearing at 7:17 p.m. on this matter. I'd like to open up another public hearing. This is for ordinance 2021-235-21.1 relative to amending the performance zoning overlay district. Notice of this public hearing was made available in the December 15, 2021 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun and posted at Laconia City Hall, SAU, Community Center, and the Laconia Public Library on December 14th, 2021. Once again, action on this item may be taken up under unfinished business this evening. I'd like to open the public hearing on this matter at 7:17 p.m. and ask anyone who would like to address this matter now come forward or raise your hand online. Thank you. I'd like to close the public hearing on this item at 7:18 p.m. I will forego my mayor's report this evening and defer to council members. If you have, so we'll pass by 15, move right directly to 16. I'll look to the council members and see if anyone would like to make any remarks this evening.
Is this where I should bring up what we, I wanted to bring up why I requested a table on the first appointment earlier. I've seen lately over the last few months, a number of good citizens request to be appointed to different boards or vacancies we have within a city organization. I also see a lot of them come through and, a quick, how do you want to say it, overview presentation of a form. And sometimes I wonder if the people going through these interviews and all this thing might be a little bit intimidated. And also at the same time, are we really digging into to make sure we're getting the best possible choice? So the thought process I had in my mind, I talked to the city manager about this, and he had some response. Basically, they had the same thing where he has history on this, is that we set up the mayor's, situation is like a personnel committee. And that prior to nominations and these things coming to the full council, they go through this committee to be vetted, you might say. Make sure there's whatever, as a council, we want to make sure is covered, reasons why, background, all that kind of stuff. And then bring the nomination, if the committee feels for it, to keep the council abreast of what's going on, to that position or appointment. We can have more discussion about what it would entail, but I just think we need to take time, make sure we're doing the right things for the right person, the right committees, and so forth. That's what it was coming down to. You can add to that, Mr. Mayor, or any other councilor, or the city manager, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there are communities that have what's referred to as appointment committees, so someone doesn't have to come out and stand in front of a city council meeting and be televised. Those still are public meetings. They would be posted, and if any member of the public wanted to come in and just sit in the background and hear the dialogue, but it's probably a little bit less formal, and maybe you've got a little bit more give and take than someone at the podium and facing a group of elected officials. So it's done in other communities, and then out of the appointments committee, recommendations would be brought forward to the full council. And typically they would try to schedule, a number of interviews in one evening, as opposed to just having to meet for only one applicant. We would try to maybe shape it a little bit so that it made the best use of that committee's time.
So it would seem to me that we're looking to have a balanced approach, not to have an interrogation by any means, but to have a conversation with someone about, maybe a little deeper as to why they want to serve, what areas are of particular interest that drew them to this committee or committee that they're applying for. Certainly sometimes we struggle to find enough full-time members and alternates. I think over the past year or so, I think we've had a pretty good, I don't know how many boards are missing people right now necessarily, but I think we've had pretty good interest, which I think is great. And I certainly, when you called me today with this to discuss this, Councilor Susi, I thought it was a very good idea, not to make the process necessarily cumbersome by any means, but just to be able to have sort of less formal conversations with folks, get to know them a little better. I think as we see, particularly in some of the areas here that we know are that planning board or zoning board are going to have to deal with, that are going to be not necessarily contentious, but they're going to be relevant. A lot of people are going to have an opinion about how these boards act. I think it's good to have conversations with folks who are going to be weighing in on that. These are important appointments in our city. But I applaud you for bringing this forward. And I certainly hope that we can, as we start the next year, have an appointment committee. I'd be interested to know what any other councilors think as well. Councilor Whitman.
I guess just a technical question to the manager. Would this be a change in the council rules and procedures that would have to be enacted?
We'll review that and just make sure we're, dotted all the i's on this type of thing, but we can take a look at the council rules and the committee makeup and see what the process is for creating a new committee. But we could certainly have any recommendations and changes for you ready for the first meeting in January.
And
Go right ahead.
so my second question is, sometimes we have competitive seats. I can think of sometimes the airport authority being a case in point, what we would do with that, because that's actually a joint with Guilford people. How would we handle that? But generally, sometimes we do have competitive positions with, and you can obviously flesh this out.
Right.
But, how would we handle those so that a person isn't sort of prevented from coming forward? If the selection's being made at the committee level, are we really following what our sort of structure is today? And that's not to say we can't do it, but I think those are considerations that need to be.
So I think the airport commission is separate because that's set up with a county commissioner and then members from both Guilford Select Board and the Laconia City Council. I think on the appointments committee would be a recommendation that they bring forward to the council. It wouldn't be the appointments committee making the formal appointment. They would do the screening, the interviewing, the conversation, if you will. I would would think that whoever the chair would be would provide a little background to say that we had, 2 applicants and we spoke with them and this is the, the recommended one that came out of the committee. There's no reason that the full council shouldn't have access to as they do right now in the public, to those who are interested in applying. So I would think even though the appointments committee is conducting that initial conversation, that all counselors would know who's applying for what position and have at least that application on paper and an opportunity to ask the appointments committee why they went one way or the other if there was, more than one applicant for a seat.
So again, can be fleshed out, but someone wouldn't be precluded from making that case directly.
Absolutely not.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Susie. I think it's something we'll work on in the next 2-year session. And I think it's a very good idea. Thank you. Any other council comments this evening? Counselor Cheney.
Surprise, surprise.
Well,
I always enjoy ambushing the manager with suggestions, but in recent weeks, perhaps months, I've probably had a dozen different people approach me about the need for crosswalk lights on Court Street, on the South End, other parts of the city. And I wondered if we could ask the manager to get staff to do a review of the areas of the city where we have crosswalks and suggest areas that might need the flashing lights that we've put in a couple of places. And perhaps some committee of the council should be involved, but there's just been enough concerns expressed to me that I think we ought to take a look and see. One of the other things that we all saw today was the North Street issue. I think it's not just North Street. There's a number of places around town where the streets are too small, and maybe we ought to be posting them so that they don't create the kind of problems that we see on North Street. So I know he has not a lot of other things to do, and so perhaps he could put together some semblance of a inspection of, like I said, there are some that that I'm aware of, and I think other councilmen are aware of. The South End blinking light, Court Street by Cumberland, I believe.
yes.
And there are others farther down on Court Street. There was a request. So I'd like us the council to pay more attention to that and see if we can't identify places that really ought to be considered, not wait for any more pedestrian accidents and rather try and set ourselves ahead of that curve.
Counselor Cheney, would you take a friendly suggestion, of course, here, that it seems like this is a matter that is public safety to start out with, correct? So would
Yes.
you be, something that maybe your committee could prioritize going into 2022? Then I think it might maybe be a follow-up with government operations and ordinances, and that, or maybe not, just as we put the signs around the city as well. I'm also wondering whether when you get these requests from residents, if you'd be so kind as to maybe push them along in an email or something to Scott, so he's always got
Sure.
an ongoing list. And you can also see from the constituents that all of us talk to, maybe we've got a couple that keep showing up that should be a higher priority, and bring that to the attention of your committee. Is that okay?
That's fine.
1 second, yes. And if, Scott, do you have any follow-up with that for Counselor Cheney?
No, we'd be happy to do that. And I think public safety makes a lot of sense. I mean, it just comes down to a funding issue because we know the cost of a pair of them, and maybe it's something we want to build in a budget. If you tried to do 2 a year, you're probably looking in the area between $50,000 and $60,000. But once you build it in the budget, you've got then, the funds there for 2 more the next year if it warranted, type of thing. But I know we did bring a couple of these things, a couple of specific locations through on the CIP, and we did identify some funds to bump up the one in front of Vista Foods that, again, the bases are in. We're just waiting on those beacons to install when they show up. We knew there was a little bit longer lead time and the bollards are in the ground, which I know will make Councillor Hamble very happy if you were here this evening. And they do serve a great purpose. I can tell you though, sometimes human nature doesn't support somebody walking the extra 30 feet and using the beacon. And I can tell you, I see it on Beacon Street West all the time. As someone who comes to the downtown quite a bit for work and commute and coming to the gym and doing whatever else, I can probably tell you I've seen that beacon get pushed once, literally once, but I see a number of people coming from Water Street and they just look and they'll cut right through to go, through the parking lot to get over to Pleasant Street, and they don't walk the 30 feet. So well-intentioned, but it's almost like you've got to make sure that the pedestrian is going to use them if you put them there. So we can certainly do the homework and make the recommendations.
Yeah, certainly maybe your committee can also prioritize them, knowing that there's going to be funding issues that we may not be able to get to them right one year, following year, and then we can sort of check them off as we work down the priority list.
Perfect.
Councillor Susie and then Councillor Lippman.
Right, excuse me. The only other request is, as part of that committee, I'd like to see if there's any input from the police chief on any areas that he knows of, or his officers know that are specific that we need to attend. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Lippman, yes, good
So
idea.
I'll let the city manager know I've used it at least twice to cross.
I just haven't seen you, Counselor. Maybe you could do a selfie and send me a text. and I'll
There's
just-
no
I can
photos.
put
It
it
didn't
on there.
happen. That's right. Any other council comments this evening? How about liaison reports? Any reports or liaison reports? Seeing none, did you?
I just said finance committee's meeting the 10th at 6:15 to review the welfare policy.
Thank you, Councillor Lippman. Moving on to item number 19, this is opportunity for citizens to comment on current agenda items. I'll be present in the chamber this evening and certainly online. If there's something on tonight's agenda you would like to address, now would be the appropriate time. Mayor Joanne. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Fiorini, are you with us?
Yeah.
Get muted.
No, we hear you.
Hello,
Hello, we hear you. Welcome.
thank you for inviting me to your meeting tonight. I do have some issues to
If you could
discuss.
just, looks like it says Joanne Fiorini. And
Yes.
your address or the ward you live in, perhaps?
I live on North Street in Ward 6.
Terrific. Welcome. Go right ahead now.
I just wanted to request a no parking sign at the base of the hill or Sheridan Street, because it's very narrow. It only has the accommodation for 2 cars, one going each way. There's also a sign already posted for caution blind driveway. It's on a sharp blind curve. And when people are known to race on this street, there's a lot of people coming from the other end in the condos and so forth. And in the summertime, they're flying down the hill. And with cars parked on the street, it's my concern is the safety of all versus the convenience of a few. So I know there's a gentleman that is opposed to this because he lives there, but there are many instances where people are trying to come either up the hill or down the hill, and there's cars parked blocking your view. So to go around them, suddenly you find yourself facing a car racing down the hill at you, and you're in their lane. So it's a terrible situation. And with snow and ice coming, the opportunity to not be able to stop in time is greater. And I would like to request no parking sign on that curve, and I'd be very appreciative of that.
Thank you very much for joining us this evening, Ms. Fiorini. And Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I'm Attorney Phil Brouillard here with William Mudge. And I noticed that,
Why don't you step right up to the microphone, Phil?
I just don't know if sometimes on the agenda, and I don't appear before this board that many times, well, at the planning board, and we're on the agenda. When we come to the item, we address the item when the agenda is gets to that item. And I don't know whether this is the appropriate time for my client and I to address that item or whether we should wait till you get to that item. So
Well, I appreciate the request and certainly
I
you're
just
always-
don't know. I just don't know how you do it.
Now
So
would be the appropriate time to address the matter that is on the agenda.
Okay.
Usually, so if you'd like to, now it looks like, I don't know if anyone else has raised a hand or not,
No,
Mr.
but
Smith.
what
but-
I'm trying to say is we're happy to wait. I just want to.
No, don't wait. Oh,
We do want to speak, but.
We'll come right up then. Come on.
I'm going to speak to some legal research that I did in the Registry of Deeds on this particular matter. Come to find out, there's an old lease in 1917 where the owner of this property gave the city a lease to maintain the sidewalk on that side of North Street. And so the cause and effect of this is that the city, by its mayor, signed a lease saying, hey, this is your property, you're letting us put a sidewalk on it. We know it's yours, but you're doing us a good solid here, letting us put a sidewalk on it. So basically, the effect of this ordinance, which we have no problem with if it's moved further up the hill past my client's property, because I'm sure that he's the only one on that hill that has a lease to the city giving them right to have a sidewalk, which we don't have a problem putting the sidewalk on it. But if you can imagine, if the sidewalk's there, that precludes Mr. Mudge, the owner of the property, from parking on his own property. And obviously, we can't just take people's right of access away, and we can't, when they're trying to do something good by giving the city a sidewalk. So basically, on that particular side of the road, it would basically cut off his access to the front of his house. And when the city rebuilt North Street, they put an area there where they can pull off. And I'm not going to sit here, and I don't think Mr. Mudge is going to sit here and tell you that's not an issue in that area. But the cutting off of access, constitutional rights of property, taking, without eminent domain, basically taking your right to get into your house. We're just suggesting that it not be in front of Mr. Mudge's property. And Mr. Mudge has actually lived in that house for 44 years, and he's got some comments, but I did provide the copy of the lease and the information to the city manager. I do have 10 copies in my file if you would like to see them. But my suggestion would be that this matter be, when you get to it, that this matter be tabled for further investigation. I did also bring a copy of these matters over to Mr. Anderson, who happened to be on vacation, well-deserved, last week. And so I tried to call him today. I couldn't get through. I was able to talk to the city manager. And basically, we just think that before the council just votes on this, that it ought to be studied a little more. And, my clients, I guess the council's got to balance my client's property rights versus safety. And can the safety be accomplished by doing it, putting the no parking on the other side and past his property? I think that would be a huge, I think that would be a good accommodation, because my client's not suggesting that he wants the city to move their sidewalk or anything like that. But on the other hand, if you can imagine doing a good thing and having basically the sidewalk there for 100 years on your property, and the city puts in a curb and gives you a little cut, and then now they want to pass an ordinance that says you can't pass in front of your property, that's a pretty tough situation. Yeah.
Sure.
And so,
yeah,
I'm going
that's
to let Mr. Mudge speak now, but also there's some other issues and some other solutions that he has regarding some stop signs on the other streets that feed onto North Street that kind of make North Street kind of a luge run for some folks that live up there. And maybe some stop signs would help things out as well.
Thank you, Attorney Brouillard. I appreciate your insights on that. copies of whatever you have, if you would like to perhaps give them to the city clerk and she can pass them around, that would be appreciated. Welcome, Mr. Mudge. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
I'm certainly familiar with the corner we're talking about here. It gets a little dicey sometimes there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's, I mean, I can tell you what's going on there is that there's been a great increase in traffic going up North Street because Elm Street has been closed down for August, September, October. So it's diverted around, goes up the hill. So there has been a lot more traffic. I have this thing written out here. I'd prefer to read it than just.
Go right ahead, whatever
Okay.
you're most comfortable with.
I'm Bill Mudge. I'm 77 years old. I'm a veteran. And I'm a semi-retired plumber. And I live at 35 North Street. The house was built in 1871 on the side of a hill with no need for parking. Every house on North Street has a driveway and a parking area except one. I bought the house in 1977. Parking has always been in front of the house. In 2004, North Street was rebuilt. The roadway and sidewalk were raised and moved closer to the house. A 6-inch granite curbing was installed, but only in front of 35 North Street and across the street from 35 North Street. I think it's the only curbing on any of those streets. The curbing was eliminated for 70 feet in front of the house, so I did have a place to park. With the new road came speed and more traffic. 3 developments off of North Street with 100 homes have added to this traffic. Plus, work on Elm Street this summer and fall diverted even more. In winter and spring, we started being ticketed for parking on sidewalk. That was last winter and last spring. Most were excused, and then they stopped excusing them. I was told that the ADA required enough room on a sidewalk for a wheelchair and suggested that we park in the street. So I paid my fines. I started parking on the street, like they said. And I haven't received a ticket since. And I know that parking in the street, moving over a couple of feet has irritated a few people off the street. I'm asking that some other alternative to no parking in front of as well as opposite 35 North Street be considered, because no one parks in most of the requested no parking area anyway. There's only one place that people park that's annoying these people. My neighbors in the area shouldn't be suffering from this. There are 3 streets that cross North Street off of Elm Street, and they go from Elm Street to the water, right down to Paugus Bay. 2 of them have no stop signs. Take a right off of Elm Street, go straight down to the water. That's Jefferson and Mass Ave, Jefferson Street, Massachusetts Avenue. I'm suggesting if School Street were the same way, it would cure the speed and traffic problem, because that's exactly what it did further up the road. The other suggestions are a little far-fetched, I know, but eliminating the sidewalks on Lower North Street. 105 North Street to Paugus Park, they have no sidewalks. Shore Drive has no sidewalks. What little traffic we do have on North Street, the people are usually walking in the street. And in the 44 years I've lived there, I have yet to see a wheelchair going down the sidewalk. There's plenty of room on the west side. This is my suggestion number 3. There's plenty of room on the west side of North Street for a sidewalk. All the houses are well back from the street with parking. And on the other side of the street, it's just grass, there's a curb there, no one can get up on the grass, and the city doesn't take care of the grass anyway. The fourth thing I'd like to ask is the North Street property owners to be a little more tolerant now that the situation has been explained. If they find it too dangerous in front of 35 North Street, there are plenty of ways to avoid it. No parking on Lower North Street is more of a punishment, I think, than a solution. Now, I did communicate with Tony Felch. When I got the letter from Wesley, it said that the meeting will consider requests from property owners of North Street. And I asked Tony if I could know who these people were, because I had my doubts. And he said, I can tell you that there have been several, and all of them live on or off North Street. That includes everybody. The other thing, it would be nice to know at least the addresses of the complainers, and he says most of them are property owners on North Street. Now, am I dealing with property owners on North Street, or am I dealing with the world?
For all these reasons, we'd like to respectfully suggest that this matter be tabled and a little further investigation be done regarding this before the council votes on it. That's the basis of our presentation tonight. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Counselor, and thank you, Mr. Mudge. I appreciate your time and your effort this evening.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I'm Coleman Feeney. I'm the owner of 34 North Street. I've been there for over 10 years. And I strongly oppose the parking restrictions on North Street. It would highly impact Mr. Mudge and his family and his tenants also. He lives on a very large embankment. If he had a park on the other side, he'd have a terrible way of getting back up to the front of his house. But I myself in the house just at the turn where it says caution blind driveway or something along those lines. The restrictions directly affect 4 properties that are there. 2 of them, which are multifamilies, my property, Mr. Mudge's property. So there are more vehicles in our houses than would be in the other ones. Also, I asked the city to look into alternative options, obviously lowering the speed limit. And I believe they came up with a good idea is putting a stop sign at the next intersection to slow people down. Maybe more signage, dangerous curve, maybe make the road a one-way. Maybe no parking on the even side, which would be my side of the street. I have no problem with that. And he could have all his parking along his. That's pretty much all I have. If the city council wants to take their time and pursue more of Court Street's issues, and maybe lower North Street's down lower on the list, that'd be great.
Thank you, Mr. Feeney. Appreciate your
Thank you
input
very
this
much.
evening. Anyone online, Mr. Smith? Thank you. Step right up. Hello.
Dan Willett, 46 North Street, across from Bill, above Corley. I'm not opposed to the no parking signs. I understand Bill's issues and his problems. Mr. Felch lives on North Street and has experienced some of the problems we've had. There is a limited sight difference from the bottom of Sheridan Street from coming up the hill or from School Street coming down. With the vehicles being parked in front of Bill's house, I've seen it all. School buses, fire trucks, oil trucks, dump trucks, all kinds of cars, vehicles, motorcycles that with a limited distance sighting from either the bottom or the top on the corner, you can't stop in time. I can respect stopping in front of your house, parking in front of your house, unloading the groceries, shuffling stuff in and out, 15-minute time frame, kind of. But to park there all the time, hours on end, just to say that you can park in front of your house, I can respect his opinion. It is a real safety issue. I can sit on my porch in the summertime and watch people come up and down. The traffic has been increased tenfold. The buildings up the hill, Lakeport, Laconia. It's just a bad situation. There is a blind driveway sign in front of my property on one of the telephone poles. This is not a new issue. We've been working with this for, I've been there for 24 years. It has been going on for a long time. The previous owner of Corley's Place had an issue with Bill also. So this is something not new. I do have a curbing on my side. I guess a sidewalk would be a possible improvement on my side to relieve the other side. The curbings are determining factors. You can't jump the curb. That distance to the south end of 51 impacts about half of my length of property to the downhill side. Open to suggestions. It is a safety factor.
So just clarifying question, you said you're not opposed to the stop sign?
No, I am not opposed to a no parking sign.
Okay.
The no.
You're not opposed to a no parking sign?
The no parking is why we're here. That's what is being proposed. I'm not opposed to it in a safety or aspect of safety for people coming up and down the hill.
I misunderstood you. Thank you. Okay.
We can all work on alternatives, open to suggestions. We need to resolve it, make it a little better.
Thank you for your time and this evening. I appreciate your
Thank you.
input. Anyone else this evening? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 20, which is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So included in your packet this evening is the project updates for December. Again, Court Street has been open for several weeks now. We will be doing the final overlay of paving in the springtime, a little bit of sod work and stuff that seed will take hold better going in the spring than trying to do it in November. So those punch list items will be addressed at that point. The Downtown TIF Advisory Board chose to do a site walk along the Riverwalk and look at wayfinding signing in conjunction with all the talk about parking downtown. So they'll be focusing on that and reporting that out at their next meeting in early January. We are wrapped up on the aforementioned Elm Street sewer paving project, and we did have another layer of asphalt go down on Elm Street, so it does ride a whole lot better than the first overlay that was put down there. Couple of items that are not in my report. I want to give recognition to our Public Works crew for the work they did over this weekend with the ice and the snow and the timing and the holidays. And I know our police and fire, are scheduled to work weekends, holidays, nights, all that stuff. Public Works is certainly on call. This was in a lot of ways a nuisance storm, but a nuisance storm that had them out multiple times, multiple days, and even Sunday, downtown clearing the sidewalks, and this morning back out on a normal work day, but doing snow removal. So certainly appreciate, even though it didn't add up to much, just the conditions and the icing and the timing of it, appreciate their work. And with my report tonight as well, I would like to let the mayor and city council know that I will be appointing Jason Bean to the Laconia Housing Authority Board of Directors. Jason's worked for the city for 20 years now. He's currently our deputy fire chief of EMS. Also functions as the city's health officer. He has a couple of degrees from Lakes Region Community College. He's been active locally with a partnership for public health, Laconia Youth Alliance, and he's taken the lead on a lot of our contact tracing and our vaccination rollout in the city. And speaking with Tom Cochran, who's the executive director of the Housing Authority, he felt this would be a great fill for their board based on the makeup they currently have and be able to focus on health and wellness and in particular some youth functions, if you will, within the role of the Housing Authority here in the city. So we certainly appreciate Jason's willingness to step up and fill that role. And I want to thank Sonia Masashik for her time on the board. She had other conflicts and needed to resign the position before the term was up, but certainly appreciate Sonia's commitment and time for the Housing Authority Board as well. So with that, I will stop and take any questions council may have.
Counselor Haynes.
Oh, Scott, I read in the water department minutes, the water department and sewer departments as far as Court Street are done.
Yes.
Will the work on Addison Street have any impact on that at all? Councilor, may I ask Councilor Susan?
Sure. If he's open to
No,
questions.
the Addison Street project, from what I understand, will have nothing to do with Court Street.
Okay, great.
Okay, and as I explained to you before the last meeting, or, we're talking about Addison Street, it's about 500 feet of street work that's gonna be done there to put water into that area.
Okay.
And I apologize a little bit for the audio system tonight. Was working last week and we turned it on tonight and we seem to have this one speaker in the ceiling working. So I know the speakers here are not. So I apologize for those folks in the audience if it's a little more challenging. Again, we didn't realize we had a gremlin until we turned it on just before the meeting tonight. So apologies there.
I'll get you a map on that, Mark, so you'll know exactly.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Sure. Scott, to second your comments about DPW over the course of a holiday weekend in a peculiar storm. I was out and around quite a bit and it is in a very good shape. A lot of snow moved off sidewalks downtown, which I always love to see. And the roads were in fairly good shape, and certainly based on traveling around to surrounding communities, I thought we did a pretty darn good job. There are no further questions for the city manager. We can move on to item number 21 on our agenda, which is new business. This is authorization of boat dealers to act as agents for the city of Laconia. The boat dealers listed below on this sheet, and I'll read them off in a moment, have been operating as agents for the city in the collection of boat fees for the last several years. The state is requiring these dealers to show evidence of a surety bond in order to authorize them to collect fees for the city and state. The city can cover these dealers under our current bonding insurance and at no additional cost, provided they are authorized annually by the city council to act as agents. In the fiscal year 2021, the city received approximately $105,000 in boat registration fees collected between these dealers and the city clerk's office. City Clerk Cheryl Hebert is asking the council to authorize the following boat dealers to act as agents for the city: Flight Craft General, North Water Marine, Watermark Marine, Paugus Bay Marine, Lakeport Landing, Irwin Marine, Winnie Marine. So at this point, I'm looking for a motion to move to approve the renewal of the boat agent agreement between the state of New Hampshire, DMV, the city of Laconia, and the boat dealers. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hands. It's 5 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. And finally, looking for a motion to move to authorize the city clerk to sign the boat agreement on behalf of the city of Laconia. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'd ask all those in favor to please indicate by raising your hands. That's 5 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Item number 21B, which is the first reading of Resolution 2022-01 relative to the acceptance of the New Hampshire State Library Services American Rescue Plan Act subgrant and to schedule a public hearing on January 10th, 2022. Laconia Public Library has been awarded a grant in the amount of $12,103 from the American Rescue Plan Act. This grant will help with remodeling the children's section of the library. This was submitted by Randy Bro, our librarian. We have a series of 3 motions here. The first being looking for a motion to waive the reading of Resolution 2022-01 in its entirety and to read by title only. So made by Counselor Cheney, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by raising your hands. It's 5 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Second, looking for a motion to move a first reading of Resolution 2022-01 relative to the acceptance of the American Rescue Plan Act subgrant in the amount of $12,103 for the Laconia Public Library. So made by Counselor Susie, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. And finally, looking for a motion to move to schedule a public hearing on January 10th, 2022, during the regular council meeting to gather public input prior to any action being taken. So made by Counselor Susie, seconded by Counselor Felch. Is there any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hands. That's 5 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Item number 21C will be on our January 10th agenda. We'll be moving that to the 10th, and that will be completed between now and then. Item number 22, agenda item 22, which is under unfinished business. This will be the second reading of 2021-19 relative to the acceptance of the Leary Firefighters Grant. The public hearing was earlier, and the Laconia Fire Department has been awarded a grant in the amount of $18,595.74 from the Leary Firefighters Foundation. This grant will replace the industrial fire gear washer and dryer system at Central Station. The central washer dryer system needs replacement and is currently on the fire department's capital improvements list for replacement. This is a fully funded grant. The fiscal impact and the only potential cost associated with this work would be if the plumbing or the electrical work is needed above what is currently on site. These additional costs would come from the fire department's operating budget. Chief Kurt Beatty has recommended the city accept the Leary Firefighters Foundation grant. He is with us tonight. If there are any questions, if we're moving forward. Right now will be looking at a series of 3 motions. The first is to waive a reading of the resolution 2021-19 in its entirety and to read by title only. So made by Counselor Cheney, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'd ask those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. Of 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Second, looking for a motion to move a second reading of 2021-19 relative to the acceptance of the Leary Firefighters Foundation grant in the amount of $18,595.74 for the Laconia Fire Department. So made by Counselor Cheney, seconded by Counselor Felch. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. And finally, looking for a motion to approve Resolution 2021-19 relative to the acceptance of the Leary Firefighters Foundation grant in the amount of $18,595.74 for the Laconia Fire Department. So made by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Cheney. Any further discussion on that motion? Counselor Cheney.
If I might, I
Please.
very strongly support this grant. This is one of the critical pieces of equipment the firefighters use, and they keep the equipment to clean it and keep it in service is, I think, critical. So I encourage the council very strongly to support this.
Thank you, Counselor Cheney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of this motion, please indicate by raising your hands. That's 5 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Thank you very much, councilors. Item number 22B, which is the second reading of ordinance 2021-235-21.1 to amend the city code, chapter 235 zoning to update section 21.1 performance zoning overlay district, to amend the ordinance to create an overlay district in the Weirs Beach area of the city. Our 2018 master plan use chapter called for the creation of performance zoning ordinance and the establishment of overlay districts throughout the city. City Council approved the performance zoning ordinance in July 2019, which defined areas of the city that were covered by the overlay district. The master plan calls for considering additional areas in the city for performance zoning, specifically recommending the Weirs Beach area. Recently, the master plan steering committee discussed creating a performance zoning overlay district in the Weirs and recommended this to the planning board. The proposal calls for the current Weirs TIF district to also serve as the boundaries for the additional performance zoning overlay district. There is a map attached to your documents in your packet tonight. While there are no current properties proposing development that could use this tool, there are several properties in the TIF district that are potential candidates in the future. Planning board discussed the proposal in September, held a public hearing in October, and they voted unanimously to recommend this to the city council. There's no fiscal impact to the city. Dean Trefethan, our planning and code enforcement director, recommends the amended ordinance. So we'll have three motions before us this evening. The first is to move the reading of the ordinance in its entirety to read by title only. Councilor Cheney has made the motion, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask all those in favor to raise your hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Secondly, looking for a motion to move a second reading of ordinance 2021-235-21.1, amending the performance zoning overlay district. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Susie. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of this motion, please indicate by raising your hands. 5 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. And finally, I'll be looking for a motion to approve ordinance 2021-235-21.1, amending the performance zoning overlay district. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Cheney. Is there any further discussion on the motion in front of us? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hand. That's 5 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Moving along to item 22C, which is the request to designate a portion of North Street a no parking zone on both sides of the road. Just to refresh recollection of what has occurred, Councilor Felch received a request from residents of North Street to designate a section of North Main Street a no parking area due to the safety concerns. Cars that park on the curve of North Street, that is just north of the intersection of Sheridan and North Streets, creates a safety hazard due to limited sight distance in the area of the curve. Cars traveling on North Street in this curve must cross into the oncoming lane to pass a parked car, and the limited sight distance prevents drivers from determining if it is safe to make this movement. Public Works proposes that a no parking area on both sides of the road be designated from the southern boundary of the lot at 51 North Street to the intersection of Sheridan and North Street to help minimize this problem. The estimated fiscal impact to the city, which is in regards to necessary signs to implement this no parking area, is $600. The cost of the signs will come from the Public Works regulatory sign budget. Wesley Anderson, the Director of Public Works, is recommending that the City Council approve the residents' request to designate both sides of North Street a no parking area in the vicinity of the curve. I will look to the counselor on this from the District 6, and I know there's been a fair amount of discussion on this. Hearing from, and I'd ask you to maybe just give us a little direction on this. I know you're probably closer to what's been going on. I'm familiar with it as this intersection as well, and
Mr. Mayor, if I could, you probably need a first motion to remove this from the table to have discussion on it.
Oh,
You-
right,
You can always
absolutely.
table again, but you would need that motion.
I didn't even see it was on the table. Oh, yes, it was, December 13th. Terrific. So Councilor Phelps, motion. Is there a second? Second from Councilor Haynes. All those any discussion? All those in favor for moving it from the table? 5 votes in the affirmative. It's now off.
I'm not voting in favor of moving it
Okay.
from the table based on what we
4.
heard. Yep.
Okay, that's 4 votes in the affirmative to move it off the table and at least present it for discussion. Right. Okay, so any sense of, it seems to me that there's a, this may be an item that needs a little further research and development of a plan. And certainly working in a collaborative fashion with the residents of this area. And I'd just be interested in your thoughts, Councillor Felch, and certainly from the city manager as well on how to proceed here. I'm afraid if we act on this, we may find ourselves in a situation where we've got some folks who are maybe adversely impacted, and that may be inevitable. But I'm wondering if a little extra time to work on this issue with Department of Public Works, with the abutters on North Street might be in order. Councillor Felch.
Well, I can tell you, I've heard from several residents of the area. Matter of fact, I got a text from one of the residents on Wednesday morning when we had the ice storm, and school was canceled. It basically said, WTF, he's there again. The city plow truck had a hard time getting through and salting the road. So this has been an ongoing problem. And then an hour and a half later, when I left to go to work, he was still parked there. And there was vacant parking space in his parking lot just up from his house. I can't foresee any other way of solving this problem. Possibly a 15-minute parking so he can load and unload his vehicles or unload people, but definitely should be no parking on that corner on either side.
Councillor Susie.
I'm going to come back to a comment that Councillor Miller made, is that we have a legal situation here that we need more further investigation, Mr. Manager?
Attorney Brouillard did call me this afternoon and indicated that he had a copy of a lease, and I'm pleased that he brought them tonight, because if he did send me an email, I didn't get it last time I looked this afternoon. So that just might have been a technical glitch, but literally just heard from him this afternoon and have not laid eyes on this document until 20 minutes ago. So I can't form any opinion on what this says at this point for you.
Okay, because if this is still an open question legally, I'd like to support, I think, what Councilor Lippman is reading relating to a table it.
Are you making a motion to table, which is
I'd
non-debatable?
like to listen to Mr. Lippman, or Councilor Lippman first.
I think there've been concerns on both sides of the matter that are reasonable to consider, and for the reasons that you raised, Councillor Susie. I think that we should take some additional time to clarify what the legal situation is, and also during that time to see what other solution might be able to be worked out that would not cause conflict in the neighborhood, if you will. There may not be a possibility to do that, but I think we at least should try.
If I might.
Please, yes.
I used to own some property over there and I'm familiar with the issue. I would suggest that council members, if we table this tonight, each of us go and take a look at the situation, because I think it's a lot easier to talk about, whether you can do this or that, but seeing what's actually there, and I've seen it many times, I think would help us all understand the necessity or lack of necessity.
Fair enough. And I guess, Scott, I think what Councillor Cheney is suggesting is probably a prudent idea. Just wondering when Mr. Anderson is back from his vacation.
As soon as the airlines can stop canceling their flights, he would be back with us. I will say he's in a little warmer spot, so maybe he's hoping for another delay or two. I can't speak for that. I did just want to comment, and staff was working with Counselor Felch, as he was the one who initiated with this item. So we were working with him just on a couple of comments, just so everybody's on the same page for tonight. It is never acceptable to be parking vehicles on the sidewalk, whether there's pedestrians coming, wheelchairs, folks with baby carriage. Sidewalks are not built for having vehicles on them. It doesn't matter whether there's curbing there or whether the sidewalk is flush with the street. There is an ordinance and we actively enforce that, and that's year round. Secondly, obviously in the wintertime, the overnight parking isn't allowed. So any vehicle that is in a neighborhood, and it's not just this neighborhood, I know, we're working with Counselor Haynes. We were talking about Beach Street with this issue. We've got another side street off of Court Street whose name escapes me right now, this tight parking and thank you. But in the wintertime, there's no on-street parking. So these vehicles are obviously going somewhere, or they're being ticketed, rightly so, because we do have the winter ordinance. So I just want everybody to understand that just in their mindset when they go to look at this and we discuss it. But we would certainly support working with the council and or abutters.
I certainly think, I guess the reason I think you probably assume this, the reason I asked if Mr. Anderson would be back in town, I think maybe leading counselors through this to take a look at the situations and the challenges associated with it would be wise. So go right ahead, Counselor Felch.
I will make a motion to table until our next meeting.
It's non-debatable. All those in favor of the motion? Is there a second?
Henry did.
I'll second.
Yep.
5 votes in the affirmative.
Thank
That
you.
motion passes. I'd like to adjourn the meeting of December 27th, 2021 at 8:16 PM.